Hey, everybody. Welcome to the nurseMARK podcast. Oh, this episode, I am so excited. I have as my guest, Leslie Grace. Leslie, welcome to the nurseMARK podcast.
Thanks, Mark. So great to be here.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. You know what, folks? Let me just read off a little bit about this young lady. She is magnificent. And hold on. Here is the bio. All right. Leslie Grace, RN, is a transformational coach and psychedelic integration guide who works with leaders, entrepreneurs, and visionaries to unlock their life force so that they can become powerful, inspired agents of change. Her work incorporates psychedelic healing, Hakomi, somatic therapy, and conscious sexuality practices, and is informed by her background in what is this? Vajrayana, Tibetan
Vajrayana.
Buddhism. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did, Vajrayana.
Ooh, we're going to dive into that. Leslie gratefully escaped her Catholic upbringing and former career as a registered nurse in end-of-life care to be drawn into the world of plant medicine and has never looked back. With 15 years of intentional psychedelic exploration, her primary authority is her own intuition. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area and offers both private and group transformational containers. Expand your possibilities by getting in touch with her, and we'll have all of her contact info on all the show notes. Leslie, oh my gosh, welcome, welcome,
Thank you,
welcome.
Mark. Thank you. Thank you. It was
Oh
a,
my
it was
gosh, where do we start on such a wild ride?
Mark.
There's so many
Oh goodness.
things. My gosh.
It's just been so great to meet you. I guess let's
Oh,
start there
have we
with it
not
was
had
so great
fun?
to meet you
Mm,
back in over New Year's and
yeah.
in ceremony together,
Oh,
and just to hear your path from nursing into the psychedelic world, and just I
yes.
feel like such a kindred spirit with you,
Right?
and
Both
so
made that
excited to see all the possibilities.
so many, so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was magical. Our time together at One Heart, and we were able to be there over New Year's, which was that was the best New Year's Eve that I think I've ever had.
Yeah, pretty great, pretty
You
great.
know, it was.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
beautiful. So the first thing that kind of pops up is, you talk about escaping your Catholic upbringing. Listen, I come from the Boston area. We get a lot of Irish, Italian
Boston.
Catholics, and my friends, all of them, who, when they were growing up, they like to
Mm,
call themselves recovering Catholics. And, no slight on religion, but it does have an effect on us, doesn't it? So let's just start with, because this is how it goes. I want to talk about where you came from,
mm-hmm.
how you get into this space and the transformation, and how is your life today. Like
Right.
that's what this podcast is about. Like, we could go
Right.
into the bits and bytes about the medicine, and of course you and I can, because we're registered nurses and we're trained to come at it from a very evidence-based practice theory. We could get into the bits and bytes, but that's not what this is about. This is about
Mm-hmm.
getting to know you, Leslie,
Mm-hmm.
in your magnificence, and just talk about, what was your history? How did you get in? And what's life like now? So let's start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so let's dive into church, baby. Oh God, the church. So yeah, and I'll say, obviously religion offers many people many beautiful things,
Mm,
community, sense of connection to
yeah.
spirituality, many beautiful things. And for me in the Catholic Church, that also came with a overwhelming dose of guilt and shame, and especially around my sexuality, my impulses, my desires. And really, I got the message from an early age that who I was wasn't okay. That there was something wrong
Mm,
with me inherently. The concept of original sin just makes me cringe now to think that like they're teaching 6-year-olds about original sin, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I grew up, kind of mistrusting myself and mistrusting my body and mistrusting my energy. And I knew that I was a sexual creature from a young age. I also knew that that was not okay, bad,
Mm,
sinful, and I kind of felt like I had to make up for it somehow by like being really good. Like somehow I was going to get into heaven by sort of overcoming my sinful nature, and I just had to be
yeah.
good girl, get A pluses all the time, be be good, do the right thing, and then somehow I was gonna earn my way into union
That's
with
the
God,
deal.
and
That's
well,
the
that's
narrative, right? You
yeah,
earn your
right.
way in.
Yeah, and so I left the church in my teen years, but and I was just sort of agnostic. I sort of knew I believed in something, I just didn't really know what was out there.
Mhm.
And in once I found plant medicine and kind of started on this path, I realized just how deep the imprinting was from Catholicism. And
Yeah.
literally just about every psychedelic journey I do that's in a therapeutic or ceremonial context has something to do with the church. And it's always like, oh, the church. Hey, guys.
Well,
And there's
you get
always
it from
sort of
such an
more.
early age, that programming gets set in that subconscious, that stuff just doesn't go away, it's still
Yeah.
there, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and to this day, I'd say I have some challenges around
sure.
prayer and, directly connecting to a divine other, like what
Mhm,
that means to be in communion with God that is, like in a devotional way.
mhm.
I certainly have a lot of devotion within me, but I've been kind of trying to find what is my own way to that now that, this old version of prayer as like oh, I have to, apologize for existing and,
It's not you know what? I was a Eucharistic minister in the Episcopal Church, so I know the
You were a
whole
minister?
a Eucharistic minister in the Episcopal Church, I wore the vestments and the blood of Christ,
Oh,
and, I
geez.
was
I
part of
didn't
that
know
whole
that.
scene, yeah, so
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got a history. I got a history for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know
Yeah.
what you mean about having that there's a set way that you're taught that you have to pray, and that's the only way that you're gonna get any connection.
Right.
Not even a
Right. Right.
connection. You're just
Right.
praying, hoping that something's
Yeah.
out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, a lot of what I've come through has been guilt and shame and repression around my sexual energy.
Mm,
Because I really feel that, the church really wanted to limit us in terms of our own innate connection to life, our innate connection to the divine. Really kind of wanted to keep the priests as the gatekeepers and all that kind of thing. And
right.
any place where we felt our own magnificence, where we connected to a sense of expansion or ecstasy, or something that's beyond our normal human self. Those forms of exploration were really shunned.
Mhm.
So in probably the biggest piece of my history has been unraveling around my sexual guilt and shame, and
Mm,
learning to find my power sexually once again, and learning to connect that life force with my own heart, with my own sense of goodness, with my
mhm.
own spiritual compass, and feeling like, oh wow, this energy doesn't have to be separate from anything else in my life, but it can all be interconnected and aligned and
Yeah.
integrated together.
Listen,
So
I recognize that for most people, sexuality is an issue, right? Because of all of the stories that are
for most
told and the
people.
imprints that we get in
Yeah.
society, and,
Yeah.
we just get it just
Oh,
blocks
yeah.
everything.
Oh,
And
pleasure's
wow,
bad. Oh, can't trust
wow.
yourself. Oh, it's
Yeah,
not about
right.
what you want. Oh, it's you gotta sacrifice what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
desiring all the time for the other. Or
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
You can
I would
rewrite
say
it.
that
So anyway, you came in, yeah.
yeah, I would say that sexuality is a big theme in the work that I do with people, and we can get more into the different
Yeah,
chapters of my past. But
yeah.
I think that mostly everybody deals with something around sexuality, around their embodiment, around pleasure and desire, around relating to another intimately, getting their needs met. I just feel like
Mhm.
there's so much more available for
Mm,
most people around integrating that energy, and really knowing like how to hold it in a good way and how to embody
mhm.
it on their terms. So
Yeah, yeah. And so you came from this very repressed background to, wow, not so repressed anymore, like, actually working in the
I'm like,
space.
look at me now, baby.
And that's
Yeah,
beautiful. It's
yeah.
beautiful. Now let me ask you, did you get in so what happened first? Was there a moment where you had this, psychedelic medicine experience that kind of cracked you open and brought all this sexual energy to the forefront. You were able to
Oh
kind of,
yeah.
oh my gosh, well, what is this?
Oh yeah.
That was the
So
catalyst for it. Yeah. So I'm really
oh
interested.
yeah. Yeah. It was a big initiation moment.
Mm,
And
mm,
so I was working as a registered nurse prior to that. In my 20s, I graduated, I was studying biopsychology and cognitive science. And so I was always
mm,
interested in the mind and the nature of consciousness and that sort of
mm,
thing. And I became a nurse because I was interested in the mind body connection and ended up in end of life care. So I was doing work in the intensive care and then also in hospice for about
yeah.
5 years total, which,
Mhm.
as you know, working with death is a profound teacher and
It is a
also
profound
heavy,
feature. Yeah,
It's
it can be, it can
yeah.
be really heavy. And it takes a certain mindset or soul set to be able to sit with someone when they're on their way out.
And I am so grateful to have
Isn't
had
it
those
beautiful?
experiences
Yeah.
and really touched me deeply. And but
Mhm.
ultimately brought me to where I realized like, well, I really want to help people live fully while they're here because
Yeah.
life is precious and short
Yeah.
and let's make the most of it when we have it. So
Right.
back while I was doing nursing, I myself was sort of struggling with a little bit of a quarter life crisis. Like, hey, is this all there is to life? I got my job. I, paid off my student debt. I'm like buying furniture for my apartment. Like, is this all there is? And I was kind of, I knew that there was something more
Oh.
to spirituality. I just didn't really know what. I just
Mhm.
didn't quite know what was out there. And I was seeing a therapist. I was on antidepressants myself.
Boy, oh
Yeah,
boy.
I just was kind of like, what am I missing? Something big is missing here.
Yeah.
And just by the grace of God, ended up in Costa Rica on a raw medicinal plants of the jungle retreat, which like I had
Again,
no idea what that meant. I mean, basically it
I
said
gotta
like,
ask you, how did this pop up in your life? I mean,
yeah,
it's not like you I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
before you would open up
yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, there wouldn't be any advertisements. Now there are, of course, but
Right, right.
you
Well,
know,
I really believe it was divine intervention. I really
of
feel like
course
it
it
was
is.
right place, right time. I was with my family on a family vacation in Costa Rica, and I had just decided I was going to quit my job and put everything in storage and just stay in Central America and travel on my own, just backpack
Yes.
around. It was my late 20s. I had some
Love it.
savings. It was sort of my chance to do that, and
Yeah.
so literally my family dropped me off in Dominical, little beach town in Costa Rica, and they were
Yep.
like, "Okay, honey, have fun," and I was just looking for, yoga retreats or, intentional communities, something like that.
Mhm.
Find myself a little eco village and boy, did I ever. So I joined up with this crew of folks, early 2009, and we bushwhacked through the jungle for 3 days with machetes. Literally, it was like the perfect metaphor. Like I'm slicing through these like constricting vines of my past, right? Like how could we get any clearer with this, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up at this beautiful nature sanctuary where a bunch of people were waiting for us to do a cacao ceremony. Now, I'd never heard of a cacao ceremony before.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we're going to drink hot chocolate and then breathe and feel our feelings. I was like, I don't know what's going on with this, but we were in this nature sanctuary with in a cave with a waterfall going over the mouth of the cave and dropping down to the valley floor. It was
Oh.
absolutely spectacular. And
Mm,
I drink this raw hot chocolate, right, and breathe into my heart, and my heart springs open and I
mm,
sobbed for hours, and all this unfelt emotion just came pouring out of me in
mhm.
this beautiful circle of people. I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, what is my heart chakra? What's all this about? And
Yeah.
everyone's just like holding me and just, oh yeah, keep the tears coming, welcome home, sister. And I'm just like, who are you people? Where have you been all my life? You're my
They did
people.
not teach this in catechism.
No, no,
No. No.
no. And then we did 3 nights of all night trance dancing around a bonfire,
Ugh.
which I'd never done anything like ecstatic dance or,
Mm,
dancing your prayers. I never knew that there was a connection between emotions and movement in the body. And, like I didn't quite understand that
mm,
the dance was a powerful
mhm.
modality to move stuck energy. I didn't
Yeah.
ever have a concept for that, but we danced for 8 hours around this bonfire through the night, and I was like, whoa, this is opening up some channels, something's happening. And then they said, oh yeah, this shaman's coming from Peru to do some ayahuasca ceremonies, do you want to do it? And I said, what's ayahuasca?
Oh boy.
Uh-huh. And then that's what they said. They were like, ooh.
Well, kind of
Hmm.
hard to explain. Yeah.
Well,
It's like trying to
yeah, they're like,
explain an orgasm to somebody who hasn't had one. I always love to use that line. I use that when I speak a lot. It's like that.
right,
I mean, you can't really
right,
explain what's an ayahuasca journey like.
right, right.
I don't know.
They were like, well,
Everyone's different.
have you done any mushrooms or anything? And I'm like, yeah, I did some in college. And they're like, well, you'll be okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Might as well. And I was like, all right, I knew it was going to be big. I didn't know how
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh boy.
And
Oh boy. Mm.
and those, so I did 3 retreats, or sorry, 3 ceremonies in a
Yeah.
week that week, and I had a full-on Kundalini awakening experience, which was bizarre and profound and
It's the most
intensely
amazing feeling.
orgasmic and
Totally.
devotional, and like I was like, oh my god, oh my god, I was in
Yeah.
absolute utter profound ecstasy,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
my sexual energy opened in this way that I was like, oh my god, this is so much deeper and so much more meaningful than anything I've ever been taught about sexuality. Um,
Mm.
I just had no clue. I really had no idea until this happened, and I just had a glimpse into
Yeah.
like what is available inside my own body.
Right.
And
I've hit, you just said something that I've been exposed to, learned about and stuff, and that's a Kundalini awakening. Like that's a term that you hear a lot now. And so I'd
I had
love to
never
hear
heard of
your
it
take
before.
on it,
I knew
right? I
nothing
had
about
never heard
this.
of it. Like, you know what? I didn't hear of it until I started to take yoga teacher certification, and I had no exposure to anything remotely like
Yeah,
that, right? The idea that
yeah,
energy was flowing through my body, right? So this
right.
Kundalini awakening, I mean, what's your perspective on that? For me, I know my personal experience, it was
Mhm.
one of the most
What was yours
intensely
like?
it was intensely joyful and just full body. I don't even know how to like every cell was completely on fire in a beautiful, energetic way. Like there wasn't
Hmm.
any piece of me that wasn't completely in love.
Hmm.
It was wild.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I really understand it. I think it's one
Mm,
of those very mysterious unfoldings that can't be forced, can't be,
yeah.
contrived. It was definitely something that was within me that in that moment somehow just the way that I was surrendering to the medicine and what
Mhm.
was that something unfolded within me. I just allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what it was, or I wasn't making it happen. I wasn't doing anything in particular other than just surrendering to this force.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it taught me a lot about myself and awakened a few things. And so, I know that there's many practices that seek to intentionally bring it about. I haven't
Mhm.
been personally engaging with that so much, but I know many people do. Um,
Right.
but
Right.
all in all, I felt like there was like something in my system was ready to be woken up, ready to be
Mhm.
catalyzed, ready to be cracked open. And I was like, okay, right place, right time, and surrendered to let that happen. And I'm so grateful. And really just yeah moved beyond words by what was revealed to me, and just that sense of interconnection with life, and sort of that like, oh wow, I called my mom afterward and I was like, Mom, I do believe in God, but it's me and it's everything, and it's like this beautiful mystery we're all a part of, and like, oh my holy shit, whoa.
And
And
what was
she's
her
like, well,
reaction to that?
she's like, well, that's great, honey. And I was like, yeah, I took this Amazonian plant
I
medicine
love
called
that.
ayahuasca. And she was like, you what?
Yeah.
Yeah, huh?
What? Oh
So
my gosh. You
yeah.
know what
So
I
then
see
I
as a theme? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
just so then I knew I was like, hey, like that was the beginning of the end for me in nursing, and I realized I needed to get
Yeah.
out of healthcare, and I needed to study sexuality, and so I basically took every kind of training I could get my hands on around conscious sexuality, neo tantra, coaching trainings. I just got as much training
Mm.
as I could get, and switch gears and open my practice doing sex coaching, and I was teaching neo tantra classes for years and doing hands-on sexual healing work for individuals and couples. And I was honestly like such a exciting time in my life where I was getting
Mm.
to share with other people this vision of interconnectedness between
Yeah.
our sexuality and our spirituality and our sense of goodness and power and bringing that
Yes.
all together. It was the kind of like big aha for so many people are like separated in those ways.
They're
And
separated. They're
yeah,
completely separate. I mean, by
yeah.
doctrine, right? They're separate,
Hmm.
and the two shall not meet. But boy,
Right,
when they do,
right. Yeah, yeah.
amazing. Amazing.
Such a pleasure.
Wow. So I
Hmm.
see this as sort of a theme, in the folks that I've been talking to, everybody I've been talking to, they get called to the medicine at this moment in their lives when they are just wondering, is this all there is? And I'm talking people like you and I who are in these careers. And, I sold my last company because I didn't need to. I could have just kept making money and doing nothing. And because I've been doing it forever. But there was this thing inside me that said, is this all there is?
Is this all there is?
Is
Yeah,
this all there is?
yeah,
You have to get rid. And I
yeah.
knew I had to get rid of me personally. I had to get rid of all of that other life before this new one could show up. And
Hmm. And
so,
I think that some
yeah.
people are in a place where they're really struggling with
Mhm.
something. They know that there's something up, either they're dealing with depression or
Yeah.
anxiety or addiction, or
Mhm.
there's something there they know, okay, hey, I've been
Yeah.
trying to work on this in every way, shape, or form and really haven't gotten to the bottom of it. So I think there's some
Mhm.
people that like come to this stuff when they're really struggling, and then other people where things are mostly good like on paper, but they don't feel good on the inside, and there's sort of
Yeah.
this like, why is that?
Yeah.
And I just feel like there's these moments of soul initiation where we're just called into the next chapter. And
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've had to learn is that, I think I think Gracia said this, let sleeping babies lie. Like, everybody gets called when they're ready to be here,
yeah,
right? So for
yeah,
me, I
hmm,
wanted everybody in my life to have an experience. I wanted everybody to come in and experience the medicine and have transformation. And yeah,
yeah, of course. I mean,
I'm here
once you've
when they're
experienced how
ready.
good it is, you're like, oh my god, I want this for everyone on the planet. Like,
Oh yeah, I want
how many
everybody
times
to
have you
do it.
ended a ceremony of some sort, and then you're like, everybody needs this. Like
Every,
everybody on the planet. Like if only everybody on the planet would take this, then
right,
right,
right.
right,
That's my point.
yeah,
Everybody should do it. Yeah, but the real deal is everybody gets called when it's their time. Like, whether it's where
well,
you say they're
yeah.
struggling with things or they just have this uneasy feeling that there's just something more to be had.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that there's different types of people out there. I think that there's people who are oriented toward a life of comfort, a life of like, hey,
Mm.
let's figure out how to get all the ducks in the row and get everything sort of kind of figured out and kind of,
Yeah.
okay, I got my house, I got
Mhm.
my spouse, I got my kids, I got my
Yeah, I
dog, I
was
got,
that guy. Yeah.
and everything's kinda, like,
Mhm.
set in place, and then we're just gonna keep it
Mhm.
like that, and we're just
Yeah.
gonna kinda oh, and if stuff starts
Oops.
to bubble up over here, we're like, "Eh, let's just, let's put a lid on that. Let's, hey, let's kinda numb out that thing a little bit. I don't really wanna look at that. We're just gonna, hey, just keep everything kinda tidy over here."
Yeah.
So comfort-oriented people, or there's people like us who are like, I wanna see it all. I wanna, like, question everything. I wanna turn over every
Right.
stone. Like, show me what this life is about. Like, what am I here for? Like, who am
Yeah.
I? What's inside of me? And people who aren't gonna be satisfied until they really feel like they've plumbed those depths and
Right.
gotten the kind of answers that can only
Yeah.
come through revelation, not
Yeah.
through like, "Okay, I've gotten it figured out," right?
Yeah. You know what? I
So
gotta tell you, it can be a lonely life living like this. because
Well, until you
yeah, it
find
can
the
be.
people that are also on that
It
path,
can be. No, and here's the
Yeah.
reason, because and I've had people that I dated have said this to me over the course of my life. They've said, "Can't you just be happy with what you have?" And my answer is, I am happy with what I have, but there's more,
But there's
right?
more.
But
Yeah.
that whole statement, "But there's more," it's just that they're not in the same place. So
Right. Right.
it can be a solo journey, or when you're lucky, you can find people
Yeah.
like you, like the rest
Yeah.
of the folks that we're in communion with, like my partner, like just there's
Oh, and it's
so
like
many
there's just
opportunities.
such a bigger, more exciting game that we could all be playing. This is what I come back
Yes.
to, that like psychedelics have opened me up to like, oh my God, there's infinite potential here for this experience that we're all sharing. And which way do we want to steer the ship?
Yeah.
What do we want our world to look like in 10
Yeah.
years, 20 years, 50 years? Could
Right.
it be more harmonious and creative and fun and magnificent? How do we bring that world
Absolutely,
about?
Kim.
And
Yeah.
but I don't think that's going to come about by like trying to keep the status quo and like let's just kind of hunker down and I'm just gonna
No, well, you're seeing the end of that now, right? It's just like so much chaos and turmoil, and things just by nature change. And,
yeah.
if
And
you're
I
in
get
that
that there's a lot
that
of
mode of
fear.
having everything, all the ducks in a row, sometimes your ducks are gonna be squashed by
Things Life is meant to disrupt us. Life is meant to shake things up, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that fear is, part of fear, instability, is part
Mhm.
of the human experience, and more so than like, okay, controlling our situation so that we don't encounter
Mm,
those kinds of fears or challenges. It's more so like, how do I become somebody who's more resilient when those things come along, or who
right.
can flow with the changes and
So beautiful. So beautiful. So, wow. You went through some transformation, like, quickly. You
it was
just
such a
hacked
blessing.
your way
Such
into
a
the
blessing.
jungle, like, had your ceremonies, and now you're in this life of
I showed you the before and after pictures.
oh my god, yeah. We'll make sure we have those posted up. Right, yeah, for sure. Absolutely, because 'cause I've seen them and they're so spot on. It's like you see one person and you see another. It's like complete. Hey,
Oh my
listen,
God.
I'm seeing, and I think we talked about this in one of our conversations somewhere in the world, Hakomi Somatic Therapy. Tell me
Yeah.
about this. I'm kinda curious.
Yeah.
When we talked about it before, it really kinda it was something I felt like, wow, that's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. So somatic therapy is gaining a lot of recognition lately for just how powerfully it can access some of our
Mm,
deepest traumas and emotions,
mm,
um, and how beautifully it interfaces with medicine work, with psychedelic therapy work. Um,
mhm,
So a lot of times when people say, "Oh yeah, I've been seeing a therapist for, 5 or 6 years," or most often they've been doing a kind of talk therapy that stays pretty cognitive.
mhm.
That's really like about the mind understanding what's going on,
Well,
really,
that's been traditional psychology since its inception
right,
here in the US, right? It's always about the
right.
mind. Mm,
Right, and even when somebody asks, "Well, how do you feel about your relationship with your mother?" Oftentimes it's like, "Well, sometimes I'm a little,
mm,
sad that we don't have but it stays really like in the kind of narrative, the cognitive narrative about the experience rather than really
mhm,
directly contacting what's there on the emotional level. So the
right.
beauty of Hakomi and somatic therapy in general is that it's really about getting underneath the layer of the mind and really going directly into the body and where and how the body is storing those emotions, those memories,
Mm,
those traumas.
yeah,
And when you can start to access it on that level, then that's where it can start to move a bit more quickly. So,
yeah,
for example, I had a client who I've just been working with for a few months, who's a very successful type A type and been in therapy for 30 years, and like I
mhm,
said, done a lot of talking about it. And then in the very first Hakomi session we did, she was able to get in touch with her inner child and the place where she was holding a lot of grief and really a lot of
Mm,
hurt around sense of
mhm,
abandonment, sense of disconnection, and in that first session, she was able to commune with and be with that child part of her in a way that was really quite touching and really quite like wow. And within 5 minutes of us starting to move in that direction, she was had tears coming down her cheeks and really like wow, getting in tune with it in a way she hadn't before. And I asked her, in the therapy you've done, have you ever touched this place in yourself before? She's like, no, never. I've never gone here ever.
mm.
And this was in the first session. So this stuff is
Yeah.
not, it's not that complicated. It really isn't. But
No,
it is so simple and so profound when people
but
can go there and touch it.
it's not mainstream. Now, I've had some great therapists over the years. I really have. Some beautiful human beings who, helped guide me through some places where
Right.
I needed, a hand to hold. And
Right.
but you're right. It wasn't until I got through some plant medicine, some sacred medicine, and then used some body memory processing. And I'm really big on
Definitely.
this. And I
Yeah.
did that. And you know what the final thing was that really blew it wide open and took all of that memory out of the cells was breath work. The breath work just blew
Yeah.
it right. It just blew it literally. The breath blew it right out of my body. Gone,
Yeah.
whoosh,
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I am a
Yeah.
huge, huge proponent of anything related to body memory processing because we've been
Yeah.
trained to think that all of the memory is retained here in the brain cells, right? In the neurons and the synapses
It's
and the
like in
glial
here. It's like,
cells of the
oh,
brain.
it's
And
that
it's
like
not true.
that
It's like
that like pit of
every
your
cell in your
stomach. It's
body.
that weight on your
Yeah.
chest. This uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm
Yeah, and
glad
so one
we
of the
have
reasons why this goes so beautifully with medicine work is that, in the medicine space, again, it's not about you thinking about what's going
Mhm,
on or thinking about your traumas.
mhm.
It's about like, what on the body level, on the emotional level, what do I need to feel and process so that I can release it? It's
Yeah.
it's really like again, getting the mind out of the way and just letting the body's intelligence unfold, letting its own healing processes take over. And so people
Mm.
get to practice this in the somatic sessions ahead of time, and then during the journey day, they just like it's like hot knife through butter. They just slice right into it, and it just all unfolds how it needs to. And
Oh,
it's really quite elegant. It's quite
mhm.
straightforward, and yeah.
It is. It sounds like that. Now, do you utilize this as right now I just heard you say that you utilize this like pre-ceremony work for
Yeah.
people. They'll
Yeah,
have
and
these
and during, right? So
in
yeah.
during. What
Yeah.
about what about post
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
afterwards? Is that part of the integration
It's
process that
absolutely part of the
you
integration.
sort of
Yeah, because
guide
like,
folks
so
through?
much shifts during the journey itself, so much
Yeah.
shifts in their relationship to that material. And then, oh, maybe afterward they feel like, oh wow, this sense of lightness in my chest, or oh, they can
Mm,
sense that something's really shifted on the body level. And then, but there may be more layers. It's not like one journey is the end all be all, right? So
yeah.
it's like there's layers of it all, and they're learning how to work with those layers. And then maybe a subsequent journey goes a little deeper and takes
Mm,
another layer down, and right. But that it's the same process that happens whether they're in the medicine space or not. So it's the medicine space is like it's an accelerated process. It's the medicine's a beautiful tool for accessing
yeah.
that in a much deeper way, but this, yeah, it works without the medicine as well. So
Beautiful. Oh, oh.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
almost want to try it. Not I almost want to. I definitely want to try it.
Well, come on down. I'll
I am
guide you.
you know what? I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
gonna be knocking on your door, and I am gonna have one of these Hakomi somatic therapy sessions. Not
Well,
one,
it would
maybe
be
many.
a, it would be
Woo!
an honor, Mark. I'd love
Oh
to.
my gosh.
I'd love to.
That would be so amazing. That's what I
Well,
really
and
like
it's
to do is
really,
experience things, right? Mm,
yeah, and it's really touching for me to get to know people on that level. I mean,
yeah.
I can honestly say that my work is so enjoyable and so fascinating, like really endlessly
Mm,
fascinating. And
mm,
when people open up like that and they're willing to kind of crack all that open and they're
mhm,
willing to trust me to hold them
Yeah.
in that.
It's trust.
It's such an honor. It's such a delight for
Yeah.
me to see where people go with it and what comes out. And yeah,
Wow. So you've been a healer, like you were a registered nurse. I mean, you're always an RN. Once you go through
sure.
that and pass the NCLEX, you're always that.
Yeah.
So you're a nurse, you're in the traditional space, but you get into sort of this real specialty of hospice, which is just healing, right? Healing at end of
Yeah.
life and creating that space for someone to have their moment of moving on.
Yeah.
And then you have this transformation with the medicine
Yeah.
and now you're in this sexual energy space in
Mhm.
somatic, like body, memory, and all this stuff. And you're a healer, just in
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
different place. Would you say that's like the biggest transformation that's occurred from like where you were to where you are today?
What's the biggest transformation?
I
I mean,
know, right?
I've
That's why
always
I
been
asked.
I've
What
always
is
been a
it?
healer. I've
What is it?
always been, I mean, from, I remember starting college, I read Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life.
Mhm,
This little book. It's
mhm,
really talking about what does it mean to be of service to others? What does it mean to be a bodhisattva? To be somebody who wants to work for the
mhm,
awakening and ending of suffering for all beings.
mhm,
And I recognized something in myself at the time, like, oh yeah, I want to help nourish this world. I want to help support people to be more free, to be more whole and more healed. And I've just been trying to figure out, what is really the way to do that. And so through these three different kind of career chapters I've had, with the in medical field nursing, and then
mhm,
sex and intimacy coaching, and then now doing the transformational coaching guide work. Through all these, I've been sort of like, how do I serve the best? How can I make the biggest impact on the world? And
mm.
so I thought that the sexuality work was it. I thought that like, oh, wow, this is the most profound, deeply
Yeah,
healing
because
work I could
people
do
have the
with
most
people.
hangups around it. Yeah,
People have the most hangups about it, and like
yep.
getting this energy into alignment
Oh,
is such a huge piece for empowering them to pursue their dreams
listen,
and go
if you're
after
an
what they want to do.
entrepreneur, there are a few books that are like you have on your bookshelf, and one of them is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, written in the late 20s, early 30s, and it's just a standard for any entrepreneur. And in that book, there is a chapter on transmuting sexual energy. This dude was talking about this back in the 30s. I mean, but it's been known for thousands and thousands of years, right? I mean, there are
Yeah.
different religious traditions that actually embrace sexuality or the sexual energy or recognized it anyway. And so for you to be working in that space with, you know, people who, boy, once they get past those hangups, whew,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everybody thinks it's just about fucking. Yay. I mean, think, when people say, oh, at least in from what I've been able to gather,
Yeah.
when you talk to somebody and you say, working with sexual energy, they immediately think it's just this physical act of which is
Yeah,
part of
and
it.
and and for sure, back in that chapter, I was doing more of, like say coaching couples around like
Yeah.
how to really have better intimacy, how to have more
And that's
enjoyable sex
great.
that they both
Yeah.
want to be experiencing. How do they talk about what they want? And there was a
Yeah.
lot around sort of like how to improve their intimacy.
Mhm.
But ultimately, so there's some like skills and tools and tricks and things like
Yeah.
that, but at the end of the day,
After
it's
all,
really
we
like
are a
about
physical body. Yeah.
sure, but at the end of the day, it's really about like who am I as a sexual being and how do I
Yeah.
relate with this energy? How do I unite it with the
Mhm.
the other forces of my being into
Mhm.
really like a sense of who I am and what I'm carrying forward in life. And so nowadays, I'm definitely seeing that as more of like a kind of piece of someone's identity. Like, how do they relate to that, and how do they
Mhm.
receive nourishment? How do they love another?
Yeah.
How do they remember and know that their desires matter, and
Mm.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So switching into, the somatic therapy and the guide work, about 5 years ago or so, I switched
Mhm.
gears and, again, I used to think the sexuality work was the most transformational thing I could do with people, and then I found this work and I was like, "Oh, no, this is the most transformational thing I could be doing with people," and
But wait, there's
to
more.
but, like, to bridge it with the sexual I was like, "Okay." So I have to admit, I actually kinda stepped away from the sexuality world for a few years while I was kinda
Mhm.
like, "Hey, I'm really practicing this
Yeah.
somatic
Mm.
method. I'm really kind of, aiming more in the medicine work direction." I kinda, like, put that chapter aside, and then it's only
Mhm.
been in the last year and a half or so that I've realized, "Oh, no, like, these have to fully come together." I really I can't
Oh,
leave any
yes.
part of it behind. It's all so integral and really
Yes.
part of what I bring, and so
Mhm.
not everybody that I work with deals with those types of issues,
Right.
but I think that everybody's got to address it on some level or another, so
Totally agree. And I
yeah.
was gonna ask that question. I was gonna ask, do you still weave some of that into your transformational guide work?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, people may be dealing with sexual trauma, they may be dealing with shame, guilt, or,
Mhm.
traumas around, attachment or intimacy, things that happen earlier in their life that have
Yeah.
really impacted how they relate with others or, how they
Mhm.
feel about their own body and, those kind of things. So, there are still a lot of folks that I work with who have, specific uh, issues and challenges around sex and intimacy.
Mhm.
Um, but I think even people who don't really gain benefit from exploring that part of themselves and, even kind of like, you know, just explore even if somebody doesn't have an issue with it, right? It's more like they've been just enjoying their sex life in a conventional way,
Mhm.
moving into like principles around conscious sexuality and bridging that with a sense of spirituality. It opens up like it doesn't even have to be that anything's wrong with it, but just
No.
like, oh, there's like another higher octave there. There's
There
something
is
else that can be
another I love that
explored.
phrase, a higher octave. Wow. Yeah, personal experience, conscious sexuality, just
And for me,
mind-blowing.
many of my psychedelic experiences have been extremely erotic, have
Right.
involved a lot of
Yeah.
pleasure, have involved a lot of ecstatic openings of like, wow,
Right.
like,
Same.
like orgasmic, like what is beyond my
Yeah.
normal sense of Leslie, what is this universe? It's like ecstatic, it's joyful, it's pleasurable. It's,
Yeah.
I'm grateful to tend toward the ecstatic direction as opposed to, like, demons and darkness and, like I've had my
Yeah,
share of
yeah.
difficult psychedelic experiences for sure, but for the most
Oof.
part, it's been really joyful and pleasurable. So
Same, same. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. I mean, these things I was talking to somebody the other day, a breathwork facilitator, and we're talking about, you know, things that happen during breathwork sessions. And, he was at a group breathwork session with some very conservative entrepreneurs and they hadn't done anything. And he said one woman, a very conservative woman, wife of one of the entrepreneurs, literally had a 15-minute orgasm during the breathwork session.
yeah,
Yeah, because the
yeah.
energy was moving and she wasn't asking for help. She was
She's
like,
riding the
"I'll
wave.
stay right here, thank you. I'll stay right here." And she shared about
Yeah.
it afterwards in the integrative circle and said she was one of the first ones to share. She said, "I just had a 15-minute orgasm and it was magnificent." And
Yep.
that opened the conversation for everybody to share. But yeah, the joy can be there in these beautiful um psychedelic medicine, breath work, psychedelic medicine, all of the sacred plant medicines. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
And I think it's
ex
a really exciting time where people are sort of finding what is their way into all
yeah.
this. Like there's this whole like matrix of, energetics and emotions and
Mhm.
relating and the purpose. Like there's kind of like this whole matrix of stuff that people are like, "Oh, wow, I haven't, if they haven't quite explored it yet, there's a million inroads into it, right?" But
So
then
many.
once you kinda, like, start to find your way in, then you're like, "Whoa, what else is it? Oh my gosh, where did that go? Whoa, what's over here?" And
Yeah.
you're kinda
I'm
following
ju I'm
the
going the sly route. I'm doing a lot of breath work facilitation and, group settings for people, and that's my introduction to the psychedelic
Yeah,
world, right? They have
yeah.
no idea that it's coming,
And
but
then they
that's
go like,
the entryway,
"Whoa,
like
there's a
you
lot
say.
more to this picture."
Like, "Oh my gosh, what? I can feel that.
Whoa.
Let's talk." Yeah, so it's like
Yeah,
you're
what
right.
else
There's
is
so
in
many
there?
different
Where
little
else does this go?
rivers to the ocean. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so
People
beautiful.
oftentimes ask me about, kind of what has my own exploration been like with psychedelics
Mhm,
over the years? And I'm like, well, okay, so, my big, like I said, I had dabbled kind of
yeah,
recreationally earlier on in my life, but my big
mhm.
introduction to ceremonial intentional use of this stuff was in 2009. And I'm like, it just keeps unfolding. It just keeps taking me new places. Like
Yes,
there's
10 plus
infinite
years later.
layers to explore. And I feel like,
Yes.
myself such a baby in this work. I just feel like, wow, there's, think about like by
Mm,
the time I'm in my 60s,
yes.
what will I know then? What layers will have been uncovered? And it's just, this
It's
work goes as deep as you do, and it just
yeah.
meets you at whatever level you're at. It just takes you, that next step. It just
Mhm.
unveils like whatever is that next little edge, and it's
And
the
it's
elegance of it is really
beautiful,
quite astounding.
isn't
So
it? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow, what a
yeah.
story.
It's been a good one. It's been a good one, Mark. I've been like,
Been a good
it's
ride, hasn't it?
That's been a great ride.
I gotta tell you,
Yeah,
I love your
yeah.
story,
Thanks. Yeah.
and it's beautiful unfolding, and here it is still expanding, expanding, expanding.
Where
So
will it go
what's next
next? We're
for
just
you?
like, where will it go next?
Yeah, I know. What's next for
Yeah.
you? Where are you going? What are you doing?
Right.
Well, I know where
Right.
you're going in June. You're going to the MAPS conference because I'm going to see you there.
Woo! I see you there.
Woo!
Woo.
For
Yeah,
those of you who
totally.
don't know, the MAPS conference is MAPS is a multidisciplinary association of I can't
Psychedelic
remember
studies.
psychedelic studies. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's an amazing organization who's been putting forth the cause for psychedelic medicine for many years in the dark, and now they're in the light. And there'll be 10,000 people in Denver, Colorado, all there to talk
Wow.
about psychedelic medicine. And
Wow.
it's I just got to chill. It's going to be
Yeah.
so
It's gonna be
amazing.
great. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
I probably know like 200 people that are going.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means I have 9,800 more people that I need to
New
meet.
friends that you're
New
ready to meet.
friends, 9,800 new friends that we can meet, Leslie.
Right.
This is going to
That's
be
right.
epic.
That's
It's
right.
going to be so good.
That's right. Well, you asked me where am I going next? Like
Yeah.
what's so over the last I've been doing this work I'm doing now, I've been doing for 4 years full
Mhm.
time, and I've been working with all kinds of people across the spectrum from, kind of all walks of life. I I deeply believe that this work positively impacts just about anyone who really undertakes it with a sincere heart, and
We're all human.
is really willing to dive in.
Yeah.
Uh, and what's been showing up for me over the last year or so has been just really recognizing that the people that I believe that we need this medicine to find its way into the hands of the most are people who are leading our world, people who have their hands on the levers of society, who are controlling, who are driving our communal ship
Mhm.
into the future. It's like, okay, they're the ones that I want to have access to this kind of vision, this kind of healing, this kind of perspective, right?
Mhm.
And so my practice has really shifted to focus more on leaders and entrepreneurs, business owners, folks who are leading their industry in some way, who have
Mhm.
the capacity to create real change. And
Yeah.
when I think about the impact that these medicines can have,
Oh.
I do believe in a consciousness, trickle down effect. I do believe that,
Mhm.
yeah, like I said, everybody needs it, but who needs it the most, right? Those people
Yeah.
that are positioned to create
Where's
real
the biggest
change.
impact? When I
Where's the
sold
biggest
my
impact?
company in 2017, I did so with the intention of healing millions of people in the mental wellness, mental health space.
Hmm.
No idea how that was going to be accomplished. And you and I are in lockstep because I realized that if I can affect, you know, 10,000, 20,000 leaders, it's going to affect millions
Millions of
beneath
people.
them.
Yeah.
because they're at the
Yeah.
top of the pyramid, and it is a trickle down.
Right.
Because
Right.
once they're in this space, in this awareness, in this
Yeah.
moment of understanding, everything changes for them and for
Right.
everybody that they touch. So
That's
all
right.
their employees.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's plenty of people in my community. I live in the Bay Area. I have a beautiful community full of, healers and creatives
Mhm.
and musicians and ecstatic dancers, and people go to Burning Man, and I have a
Yeah.
beautiful community here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do healing work of various kinds, and want to make the world a better place. And
Mhm.
I have a lot of friends with great intentions, with great vision for the future, and
Mhm.
but their ability to follow through and actually create change
Mhm.
in the mainstream world is, can be somewhat limited.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I see, like, there's a lot of beautiful intention, but, like, who has the capacity to actually, implement those changes and take those steps?
Right.
And so I personally believe that conscious business, that conscious leadership is going
Mhm.
to change the world. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, all
Which is what
right,
our friend Kent is doing, right? Kent
that's right. I had a
Kurzweil.
great conversation
He's
with
doing,
Kent.
he's doing great things in
Yeah,
conscious capitalism and
yeah,
really putting that forward, which is
yeah,
an amazing concept.
yeah,
And yeah, so
yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
beautiful. It's just I'm so glad that we've had this time together to chat, talk about you, which is a
We're like,
beautiful
I
subject.
see you, Mark. We're on the. I
Yeah,
got you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Let me ask you this now before we wrap this up.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you'd like to share with anybody who's listening or watching this right now? Right here, right now.
Mm.
Mm,
I'm thinking about the me that I was before I got into all this.
mhm,
The me that was like, that felt kind of alone, that felt kind of like, wow, I'm really sensitive and this world is kind of harsh and kind of
mm,
screwed up, and like, does it have to be this way? And I didn't really have my community. I didn't really know,
mm,
who felt similarly to me, or, was I the one who was messed up, or,
mm,
was it the world that was messed up? I was kind of confused about
mhm,
what actually was going on and what my place in it was. And I was kind of like, wow, who's out there that knows? Does somebody know what's going on? Does somebody have a better idea than me? And I really wish that at that time that somebody could have come to me and said, like, hey, you're not alone.
mm.
Hey, there's lots of us out there that think the way you do.
Lots.
Hey, you just haven't found your tribe yet. Hey, you
Mhm.
just haven't found community yet, but
Yeah.
they're out there and they're closer to you than you think. So,
Calling in the tribe members. Come
mhm.
on in.
Come on down,
You
baby. Like,
know, it's all good.
yeah,
It's all
yeah.
good.
Well,
Yeah.
and just that it can be like, what we can all do together can be so good. I
Well,
think that I keep running into my own limiting beliefs about actually what we can do or what we
it's
can
what we
achieve
have.
or
Yeah.
how awesome things can be. And I'm like, wait a minute, they could be
Yeah.
even better than that. Why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. You know what? When you said that, the limiting beliefs, have you ever read the book The Big Leap?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I think I need
love
to read
that
it
book. And
again.
he talks about the upper limit, right? We have this upper limit where we think this is our ceiling. This is as far as we can
Hmm.
go. But you
Hmm.
and I know, we know
There's always more.
there's always more.
There's always
It's
more.
just
Yeah.
unlimited. Yeah.
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 And that can be scary. That can be like, "Oh my
Sure can.
god, like, where's the edge of it? If there's always more, then how do I
Mm,
control it? How do I," it's like, okay, we're not controlling anything. We're just learning to
yeah.
swim better. We're just learning to
Just
ride the
surrender.
rapids. We're learning to yeah.
So perfect. All right. So, folks, we're going to have all of Leslie's contact info and the show notes. We'll have it all over the place. It'll be in the promo. But Leslie, if someone wants to get a hold of you, like right now, they're so inspired listening to your story and they want to connect with you right now, what is the best way for them to, like, immediately? They're going to
Yep.
stop this recording and they're going to call you or email you or do whatever it is you tell them to do right now.
That's right. Someone can email me at timelesswisdom@protonmail.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
timelesswisdom@protonmail.com.
that's right.
Excellent. All right. Leslie
Thank you.
Grace,
So good to
I
talk
love
with
you
you.
so much. Oh my
I love
God.
you. It's only the beginning,
Uh,
Mark.
huh?
It's only the beginning.
Only the beginning. Oh, that's right. You know what? We've collaborated before. We've actually sung songs in front of an audience, and
That's right. That's
we're
right.
old pros at this. Like we got
Oh yeah.
collaboration already down. We got to get into the next thing. So yeah, we'll talk about that offline. All right.
Yeah.
Okay,
I love
everybody.
you.
I love you. Thank you for being on. Everybody, folks, thanks for listening in to this episode of the nurseMARK podcast with my beautiful guest, Leslie Grace. And you know what? This is a wrap. You know what I'm going to say? Wherever you are, best night, best day. No, make it the best day ever. Yeah. See you soon.